In his 2013 book, False Flags, Template for Terror, author Michael Collins Piper wrote in comparison between 9/11 and the 93 bombing with KSM, Youssef, and companion Ajaj, if the uncle and nephew teams really are Arabs and or Muslims, the fact that nephew Youssef was working closely with a reported Israeli intelligence asset in the first World Trade Center attack is still noteworthy indeed, particularly since the Israeli asset in question was himself an Arab. So is it wrong and controversial for few daring investigative journalists, researchers, and officials, regardless of present Arab or Muslim involvement, but to speculate or conclude that the 1993 World Trade Center bombing was in some part, if not in total, an Israeli Mossad operation? Especially those who are able to stick around 8.5 years later on the day of 9/11 with the arrest of the dancing Israelis. And if that claim was supposed to be discounted, only then to be vindicated in 2009, when New York Times reported that Flight 93's hijacker pilot Ziad Jarrah has a cousin named Ali, who was arrested in Lebanon for having been a Mossad spy for 25 years, and also in the days after the attacks, his immediate family refused to believe Ziad was even a fundamentalist or hijacked Flight 93. While at the same time, when none of the flight crew and passengers witnessed 4 hijackers, only that there were 3 hijackers on Flight 93?
There's 3 guys, they've hijacked the plane.
You know, he said his plane had been hijacked by 3 men.
He told me that 3 people had taken over the flight.
There are 3 men that say they have a bomb.
She said my flight had just been hijacked by 3 guys with knives.
And while the cockpit voice recorder, which was played to victims' families of Flight 93 during the Zacharias Moussaoui trial, later transcribed and detailed that Saeed Al-Ghamdi was in the cockpit piloting and not Ziad Jarrah. And how can we forget his Egyptian confidant Mohammed Atta, the proposed leader of the attacks, who not only had Mossad agents posing as art students living next door to him in Florida, but is also the first believed to be living hijacker after 9/11 due to the fact that his father had gotten a phone call from him after the attacks, in which he also concluded and said who is ultimately responsible, and his once pink-haired stripper girlfriend, Amanda Keller, who not only partook in his drinking alcohol and doing lines of cocaine, but had also said that he could speak Hebrew? Regardless if these guys ever hung out in mosques, these guys like to party, just like Ramzi Youssef and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed did. But neither of these figures are serious enough and actually fit the profile to take on a suicide mission. But in reality, they certainly likely know how and where to find those who would. But has there ever been any evidence out there to tie KSM directly with the Mossad or Israel, aside from what we've demonstrated with his nephews? Well, it seems there is. According to Associated Press writer Jim Gomez on June 26, 2002, written in an article titled, Top 9/11 Suspect Live Lavishly, after KSM had been revealed to be the organizer of 9/11 and on the FBI's most wanted list, the article details that Philippines Police Colonel Rodolfo Mendoza being public about his feelings that the 9/11 attacks were planned there in 1994, but that with the capture and interrogation of Abdul Hakim Marad from the subsequent discovery of Ramzi Youssef's laptop left over in the apartment fire, the Bajinka plot or plan was thwarted, but that it appeared KSM was also supervising the planning along with them there in the Philippines, with other operatives. But it also says in the article that a confidential Philippine police report prepared by Mendoza states that Mohammed, KSM, had traveled to Israel and the United States, according to the report. KSM traveled to Israel? What? Why would KSM travel to Israel? Can you say game changer? So yes, Michael Collins Piper could have been very well right. KSM could have also been an Israeli Mossad asset working ubiquitously for or within Al-Qaeda with his anti-Shiite vitriol. But in hindsight, around the 93 bombing, it was not a wild accusation to charge such a claim for involvement by Israeli Mossad or Jewish organized crime. And if we need to include a semi-vindication again with the late world-renowned author of Jewish intrigue, Michael Collins Piper, where in his first book in 1993, Final Judgment, The Missing Link in the JFK Assassination, which it in all its editions was banned in several countries due to its controversial implications underlining Mossad and Jewish organized crime. Yet in 1994, a year before William Kunstler passed away, he wrote an autobiography titled My Life as a Radical Lawyer, which he certainly was when you look at all the high-profile cases that he defended, which coincidentally was also briefly this guy. Jacob Rubenstein, aka Jack Ruby.
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
Well, not exactly. According to Kunstler's biography describing Ruby as a violent and mentally unstable person, paranoid of pogroms and anti-Semitism, it states, When Jack told me he killed Oswald for the Jews, I believed him. On each of the 3 occasions we talked, he said, "Bill, I did this so they wouldn't implicate Jews." Lee Harvey Oswald had belonged to the Fair Play for Cuba, an organization with a number of Jewish members. Because of this association of Oswald, Jack's convoluted thinking led him to believe that the Kennedy assassination would be linked to Jews. So did Williams' Kunstler's speculations and findings on Imad Salem serve him some merit for his cases for entrapment for the landmark plot bombers, and or possibly being a Mossad or Egyptian asset with closer oversight of the 1993 bombing than he proclaimed?